Okay, Professor Hildebrandt here. This is the second in a three-part series of lectures for Chapter 7 from our McEachern text on unemployment and inflation. So in this lecture, I'm going to wrap up unemployment. Important though, if you did not watch Chapter 7, Part A, where I define what unemployment is and show you the unemployment rate calculations and also define the labor force, you need to go back and watch that one first. So, we talked in Chapter 5 about how we have different economic indicators, but we have two different types, lagging and leading. So leading, where is the economy headed? Lagging, where have we already been? What have we already been through? And so our unemployment rate is actually a lagging indicator. So our economy starts to contract, we start seeing decreases in real GDP, and then the unemployment rate starts to go up and really shows us what's happening in terms of employment in our economy. So I often get asked from students, they're like, okay, so like we hear this unemployment rate talked about in the media or whatever. How do they know? Okay, well, we get our unemployment data from two different surveys, okay? And again, this is work that's done from our Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the first is a current population survey. And so they do a monthly survey of different households and they ask them questions about, are you working? If not, are you looking for work? When's the last time you worked? How many hours are you working? What is your income? Right? Now, it's a survey. Obviously, it's not a complete representation of the United States' population, right? But when you take your statistics classes, something we'll talk about is how we use the idea of sampling to represent an overall population. And so that's what we do when we calculate our unemployment data as well. And then there's a current employment statistics survey as well. And so this one is focused on the firm side and gathering data from firms, okay? And so these two together give us the information we need for unemployment and labor force calculations to take place. So what are some things, though, that are not included in the official unemployment rate? Well, groups of people that we say are underemployed. So maybe they're working part-time, but they would like to work full-time. Or maybe, you graduate from college, you have a degree in accounting, you pass your CPA exam, and you're working as a waitress. Okay. You're underemployed, right? If you have the skills and ability and you are certified to be an accountant, then you could make more earnings working as an accountant, most likely, versus working as a waitress. So the first one are those that are underemployed. The second, we say marginally attached workers. So remember, to be technically unemployed by our official definition is those three things that I talked about in the first video. You're not working, but you're willing and able, and you're actively seeking jobs within the past month. So if you have actively looked for work in the past year, but not the past 4 weeks, we say you're a marginally attached worker. And so we do have different, if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics at any given time, there's actually more than one unemployment rate, and it defines the different ones and tells you which groups are included or not included in the different rates. I mentioned this as well in the first video. Discouraged workers. So you were marginally attached. You were a marginally attached worker. You had looked for work in the past year, but then at some point you totally give up. It's been more than a year since you've looked for a job. You're no longer unemployed. We don't even call you marginally attached. We call you a discouraged worker. So it's kind of a weird term because we're saying worker, but then that adjective in front of it, discouraged, right? So this is someone who is not counted in our unemployment data. So there you go. Discouraged workers simply drop out of the labor force because they cannot find work. They're no longer looking for work, and so they're not included in the rates that are published. The chapter goes on to talk about how unemployment will vary with different groups. And so I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. You can read more about it in the text. But we see unemployment rates vary with levels of education, right? That's why most of you are seeking to attain a college degree, because we see lower rates of unemployment amongst those that have higher levels of education. Age, We do tend to see higher unemployment in our teenage population, so that's 16 to 20-ish age range. They have a lot higher unemployment rates. Why? Lots of reasons. Firms may look at them as not being as reliable. They don't have as many skills and experiences, right? And I do even hear that from recent college grads. Oh, all the jobs want experience. How can you get experience unless someone gives you a job to get experience, right? So it's a tough thing. But so age is one of those factors. Race and ethnicity, we do still see lower unemployment rates amongst white workers. And gender, we actually see lower unemployment rates among women who were 20 and older. And I think a lot of this has to do with still there's some self-selection bias in terms of careers. There's two groups in terms of different career paths that still tend to be sought out primarily by women, and that's K through 12 teaching, particularly like elementary school teaching, and then working as a nurse. And those two professions are more recession-proof, meaning even during a period of economic contraction, we still need teachers, we still need nurses, okay? Men tend to still be the dominant gender working in jobs related to construction, and construction jobs are really boom or bust. So during a recession, those are typically the first jobs that are cut. And so that's why I think we tend to see lower unemployment rates amongst women. So here, this one is looking at the different rates for educational attainments, and these numbers were as of 2015. And so if you did not even have a high school diploma, you were looking at an unemployment rate around 8%. If you had a high school diploma, you were at about 5.5%. But I want you to notice the difference between A and B. High school diploma, A. B, some college, no degree. That is about the same. It's like 5 to 5.5%, like 0.5% difference, okay? So you don't want to get stuck at B. You really want to move yourself down here to C, where you have that bachelor's degree and you're at about a 3% unemployment rate. This is actually data from Europe, Spain, Greece, Portugal, and then what we call the Eurozone. And this was just showing how during the recession, because it wasn't, we call it the Great Recession here in the United States, but that recession didn't just affect us. It affected countries all over the world. And so we saw astronomical rates in the younger populations in some areas of Europe. I mean, look at Spain. You're talking about an over 50% unemployment rate at the height of the recession for people in Spain ages 16 to 24. 16 to 24, so that's still including adults who already had college degrees, and they still had a 50% unemployment rate, 1 in 2, okay? That's really, really high. So again, just kind of showing you how we can have differences with different groups. Unemployment also varies by occupation. So I mentioned this a little bit already. Blue-collar workers tend to see higher unemployment rates compared to professional and technical workers with lower rates. And then again, construction workers, high swings, right? So seasonal and subject to really wide swings over a business cycle. Right now, our housing market is booming again. New construction is popping up everywhere for businesses, for residences. And so right now, those people are doing really well, making a lot of money. But should we hit a recession, should our housing market have issues again, a lot of them will find themselves unemployed. It also varies across different regions in our country. Sometimes it's because we have a dominant labor market. Look at Detroit, right, in Michigan. So during the Great Recession, Detroit became the largest government municipality ever in the United States to file bankruptcy, okay? Well, Detroit is home to American auto manufacturing, and we were in a recession. People were not buying new vehicles. And so our U.S. Automakers were in a lot of pain. Well, therefore, so was Detroit, Michigan. Okay. And so here we were just looking at different unemployment rates for different metro areas. So you had some on the higher end, Cleveland, Anchorage, Detroit, Chicago. Look, even Atlanta was towards the top. Okay, and then on the lower end, places like Honolulu, Denver, Boston, San Francisco, DC. And this is just showing that, again, you can have very different rates at the same period of time. So this was May 2012. This was after the Great Recession had ended. Wow, though, California and then this one place in Arizona, 15 to almost 30% unemployment. But then we had Iowa City, we had a city in Vermont, Nebraska, Minnesota, North Dakota. Look at this, less than 4% unemployment happening at the same time. So very different pictures of what was happening in some of these states at the same time. This was from February of 2009. So we were kind of in the middle of the Great Recession. And you can see some of the states were starting to get pretty bad. We had some red over here, which was 10% plus. Again, Michigan was at 12%. Over here, the Carolinas, 10% plus. But and then the orange wasn't great either, right? Georgia was almost 10%, most of the southeast here. But we had a lot of these green states too that were under about 5% or so, 6% unemployment. Again, this was February of 2009. And then we fast forward a year and a half. The recession actually had ended. But remember, what did I say? Unemployment is a lagging indicator. So by August of 2010, the Great Recession was officially over. Yet look at our unemployment rates now. Now we have more states in this top tier of 10% over, including our state of Georgia. Okay, we had a lot more that were in the 7 to almost 10% range, right? All these purple states all through up here. Okay, and we had very, very few, right, states that were any lower than that. I mean, we have no one in these two categories. So we have one state that's in the 3% range and 2 states that were in the 4% range. That's it, y'all. And then 4 more maybe that were about 5%. So really wanted just to emphasize again that unemployment, in terms of showing us what is showing us what has already happened. Okay, it's painting a picture of what we've already experienced. Okay, let's skip those. So let's talk for a moment about different types of unemployment. So we have the first one is called frictional, and frictional is actually okay. Think of frictional unemployment as it takes time for the job seeker to find the best fitting position. Okay? And so sometimes frictional unemployment occurs because you quit on your own. You decide to quit your job so that you have the time to devote towards finding a better position for your skills, experiences, and level of education. So frictional unemployment, from an economist point of view, we actually think this is okay. This is a good thing. This makes our economy better. Why? We're focused on efficiency. We want that resource of labor to be used to its maximum productive capabilities. All right, our second type of unemployment we call structural. This one's more problematic. This is typically caused by changes in consumer demand or changes in technology. So let me give you an example of each. For a change in demand, we have seen unemployment recently for tobacco farmers. You're talking families that farm tobacco for generations, finding themselves out of business, unemployed. Why? Because consumer demand has dropped so low for that product that those jobs are no longer needed. Okay, so why is that problematic? Not smoking is a good thing, right? That's what the doctors tell us. It's problematic, though, for the people that had those jobs and had those jobs for a long time. Because now, what if their skills don't translate to something different? They may have to go back to school. They may have to learn how to do something new. Technology has a similar impact. If you were to look at top corporations in America back in the 50s, 60s, even 70s, the CEO that sat on the top floor, and it was probably a man, That's just the way it was back then. He was surrounded by a team of support staff. All those secretaries and office administrators that were needed to keep his calendar, type his memos, answer the phones, greet people. And now, a lot of those jobs, that clerical work, is obsolete because of new technology. We've even seen this with corporations in terms of their HR and payroll departments, right? We now can use fewer people who utilize computers and specialized payroll and human resource software to do the job that it used to take 10 or 12 people to do. And now maybe we do it with 2 or 3 people. So technology has caused displacement of workers. Again, if no other company is demanding those jobs, these people might need to go back to school or somehow get new skills and be re-educated to do a different job. So structural unemployment is painful for an economy. In the long run, though, if those people are able to learn how to do other work and become more productive, we are better off, but it's a painful process. And then we have cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment arises due to a contractionary business cycle. Okay, so it's due to fluctuations in our business cycle. Cyclical unemployment comes about during a recession. And later on in this course, when I talk about things that our federal government tries to do in terms of fiscal policy to combat unemployment, this is the type of unemployment that I'm referring to. Okay, so the government will often step in during a recession and try to help us get rid of or reduce cyclical unemployment. Good news, though, I know this is not always a good news chapter when you're talking about not having a job, but good news is that unemployment is not as detrimental as it was in the past. We do now have a fairly robust unemployment benefit program here in the United States. At any given time, on average, about half of those who are unemployed qualify for unemployment benefits. There are some criteria. This criteria, though, is often changed or extended during contractionary periods. So the criteria is that you've lost your job through no fault of your own and you're actively seeking work. Again, you typically can receive benefits for about 6 months, and you'll get about half of your previous take-home pay. Now, if you're at a lower income level, then you tend to get a lower percentage of your total take-home pay. If you were at a higher level of income, you're going to get a lower total percent. 6 months, but again, during the Great Recession, I believe in the state of Georgia, it was like you could qualify for unemployment for like 27 months. It was over 2 years. It was a really long time. May reduce the incentive to find work. No, sorry, y'all. If you think about, you're offered a job to wash dishes in a restaurant. Not a very good job, y'all. And your take-home pay after taxes is going to be $300 for a week. Or you stay home, apply for some jobs online, and receive unemployment benefits of $275 a week. I don't think you're going to wash dishes for an extra $25, right? And we saw this. We haven't yet had the time to truly analyze the data, but I do believe once we look back at the unemployment data during the pandemic, we're going to see that extra unemployment bonus that was part of the CARES Act is definitely, we're going to see data that shows that it definitely did reduce the incentive for a lot of individuals to try to find work. So, just some international comparisons as I wrap this chapter up, or this part of the chapter. Unemployment is higher in Europe than the U.S., okay? One, their unemployment benefits to average pay is a lot higher, a lot more than 50% on average. They can get them for a lot longer than we give unemployment benefits. And it's really difficult to fire workers. There's a lot more labor laws and things protecting workers' rights over in Europe. Japan witnesses lower unemployment levels. People typically work for one company out of school and they stay there until they retire. That's still very normal culturally in Japan. So sorry. And so this is just what this graph is showing. Differences between those three different areas, US, Europe, and Japan. Okay, so this topic is actually from chapter 8, but as I no longer covered the entirety of chapter 8, I want to throw that in here. Labor productivity, I think you even had a question on it maybe in chapter 3. But this is an important concept, and so I'm not going to typo there. I want to make sure that I talk about it here for a moment. So here's the basic formula for calculating labor productivity. And what is this showing us? Just what it says. How productive is our resource of labor? So in your numerator here, it's just some measure of output, okay? It could be like the example down there. It could be the number of units produced, or it could be the market value of the goods and services bought and sold. It could be, we could call it real GDP, right? Because real GDP is a measure of production. So any measure of output could be what's going in our numerator here as we calculate labor productivity. Well, then in our denominator is some measure of a labor input, the resource going in. So down here, it was the number of hours worked, but it could also have been the number of days worked. It could have been the number of people, okay, that worked to get this output produced. And so down here, we had 1,000 units produced, 250 labor hours went in. And so the labor productivity is 4 units per labor hour. So again, this is going to be, this could be content on the Unit 2 exam. So I want to make sure we cover the idea of labor productivity. Let's do a couple of review questions as I wrap up the second section here of Chapter 7. So first, how do we define the unemployment rate? A, number of people in the labor force who are currently not looking for a job. Hey, if you're not looking for a job, guess what? You are not part of unemployment. So we know that's not right. B, number of people in the labor force currently unemployed. Now that kind of sounds right-ish. Number of people. We're asking for the unemployment rate. This is describing the unemployed, not the unemployment rate. I don't think B is correct either. Let's look at C. Percentage. Okay, now that word, percentage, that matches rate. Percentage of people in the labor force that are currently unemployed. I think we have a winner, but just to be safe, I'm going to look at D. Also says percentage. Percentage of people in the labor force who have a job but feel undercompensated. No, we'd probably classify them as underemployed. So there you go. Our answer for the unemployment rate is defined as the percentage of people in the labor force that are currently unemployed. Let's try another one. A country has a total adult population of 200. Of those, 120 currently work, 30 are looking for work, 25 are discouraged workers, and the remaining 25 are retired. What is the unemployment rate? So you need to remember your formula for the unemployment rate is the number of unemployed, so we're going to have to figure that out, divided by the labor force, and then multiplying times 100. So recall, the labor force is comprised of 2 groups of people. 1, those who are working. 2, those who are looking for work. So let's look at our numbers. Okay, total adult population is 200. Of those, 120 currently work. Okay, so they're part of the labor force. Check. 30 are looking for work. Check. Those are my unemployed. 25 are discouraged workers. They don't count. 25 are retired. They don't count either. So my labor force here is 150. My number of unemployed then is this 30. So I plug in and I'll say 30 divided by 150 times 100 to get me to a percentage. And the answer here is 20%. Okay, one more. Tom works 20 hours a week and wants to work additional hours, but cannot get an offer. What is Tom? A, Tom is a discouraged worker. Incorrect. A discouraged worker is not working and they are not looking for work, and it's been at least a year since they have. B, Tom is marginally attached to the labor force. Also incorrect. Marginally attached, you are not working and you've looked for work, but it's been about a year or more than a month. It's been more than 4 weeks, less than a year. C, Tom is not part of the labor force. Hello, he is working, therefore he is in the labor force. D, Tom is underemployed. Bingo. Tom is underemployed because he's only working part-time, but he would like to work more. All right, guys, this is it for unemployment. Stay tuned for one more lecture in Chapter 7 on inflation.